Okay. Uh, I'm just figuring out how to share the screen. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let me know when you guys can see my screen. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Nope.
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. Says error occurred while sharing the screen. How about now?
Yes, I think it's starting to work now.
Awesome. All right, then let's get started. So last time when we had this session for lightning flows, so we were going through the very basics of lightning flows, and I was showing a couple of use cases which I already built, and I didn't really have a working session of like showing you all how I built it. I just showed you the whole built components and then I explained you with each details. So let's dive into on a working session today and see if we can tackle like two use cases and see how that can be solved with Lightning flows. One is going to be the similar building of a screen type of Lightning flow use case, and the other one is going to be how a lightning flow can be utilized at the background when you don't see a screen, but obviously you can use lightning flows as a replacement for your triggers, or it could be something that cannot be achieved from your out-of-box features. So let's say let's take a scenario where we are going to have a scenario to roll up all your child object fields into your parent object, and we would try to see how that can be rolled up on your lookup relationship. So we all know that Salesforce limitation is that roll-up summaries are done only on your master detail relationship, and you cannot do a roll-up summary through your lookup fields. So when we have a requirement with a customer, like let's say it's an already existing application, and we have a scenario of rolling up the child elements to your parent record, and you figured it out that there is no master detail left out for that child object, and you had to do only through lookup. So the only option right now without flows, all you can imagine is writing a trigger code to do a roll up on the update of every child record so that it keeps updating the parent every time a child record is added or deleted, whatever it is. Right. So let's see how we can eliminate that trigger code. As an admin or a consultant, you can straight away start designing a flow and a process builder to handle this so that you don't have a dependency on a developer going forward, or if you want to maintain the application out of the box, you can still do that with Lightning flows. So if you had...
I just had a quick... I wanted to mention something very quickly. This is like so timely because you mentioned that you wanted to do this to get rid of the trigger, but sometimes you don't have that option. So I have a client, yesterday they asked me to do something where they have a managed package, so I can't really touch any of the code, but they have the similar requirement. They have a lookup relationship and they want to do something in the child based on the parent, and the only way I believe I can do that, I've looked through many things, so I think the only way I can do it is through flows. So it's like so like funny to me that I just heard about this scenario yesterday and then today you're talking about it.
Yeah, so don't worry, this session is getting recorded and probably you can look back again in this video to implement your scenario as well. Yeah, in that case, probably I would advise you to look at the first video as well, because the scenario which I'm going to explain is based on the last video which we made. Probably if the participants are not aware about the first section which we did last, I think a couple of weeks back. Let me give a recap what we did in the last week. So not on the details of what we did. I'm going to give a recap on what the example I had. So I'm going to use the same example. So I built an application for helping the recruiters in managing their job application and the applicant's work history. So I created an app called Hiring Lighting Flow, and I have only two objects in it. One is a job application and other is a work history. So for each job application, there's going to be a child object called work history, and that will list all the work histories which I have in my whole life. Say if I have worked in 5 companies earlier, all my 5 companies work history details would be listed here. And if I have to show you what work history record will contain, it will just contain the employer name, a job ID that is related to, that is a parent record, and it will say how many years I worked in that company and the start date and end date. So don't look at the data metrics in here, and everything is in this dummy data. So today's agenda is going to concentrate on this number of years. So we're going to roll up all these fields into the parent record, that is the job application. So let's take this record as an example. So right now we don't have a field to roll up. So let me go ahead and create a number field in the job application. So that we can roll the child object fields into this field. So I'm going to name it as total years of experience. And make it visible for all the profiles. Let it be on the layout. Let's see the field is showing up. Okay, there is some cache issue. Need a refresh. This is yes. Okay. Yeah. So now the field is coming out. Let's say when for this example, let's say when I create this application, I enter it as 0. And let's see how we can design the flow for this. So I'm going to go into the setup. I'm going to start creating a flow. So we go to flows. So the whole agenda of this particular use case is to, given that any child and parent object with a lookup relationship, we are going to roll up all the child objects data into parent object. So through the flow, you can pretty much do a roll up of or summation of value, or you can do concatenation of values. Say if you have a text string in a field, and if you want to combine all the characters in the string, characters in each child record, and put it up in the parent record. So that's one thing that you can do with flows, the same roll-up summary type of thing. and also summation of all the values that you have in the child, bringing into the parent. That is also another thing you can do. But though we speak about replacing the roll-up summaries with flows, there's not much flexibility with the flows that you can do because, as you know, roll-up summary has count, and the roll-up summary has other operations like average, I guess. So all these inbuilt aggregation functions are a little bit tricky when you come to flows. So you have to lay out different other levels of objects, I mean the elements inside the flows to do those operations. So you want to do an average, then you have to calculate a summation of all these values and then divide it by the number of records in the child object. So everything is going to be a custom logic, whatever you're going to do. It's all about how you want to design the logic. So for our session today, let's do a summation, and it's going to be a similar approach. All you need to do is for an average, you would be designing the formula, and then you would be adding that into the flow logic. And for count, the same way, you're going to loop through the list of records in the child object, and then count with a variable inside the flow, and then you bring that variable to the parent object. So once we start doing it, you will get a sense of what I mean. So before getting into the flows, as I told earlier, you just need to prepare your flow chart in your mind so that you know what you're going to do in the flow. So our agenda here in this record, so we need to roll up all the number of records, which means the first step of the flow is going to get this ID. So because you need to first identify which record are you going to roll up. So this is the parent record that you want to roll up all the childs to this record. So first you will fetch this ID from the URL, or you can even pass the ID through your process builder, which I'll come back to later. So once you have the ID inside, you're going to query this object, job application object, and query this one particular record, and you are going to store this particular field inside a variable. So when I say variable, if you're not coming from non-coding background, variable is like a placeholder where you hold on to a particular field or a value so that you can reuse it in your whole flow again. So once I query this object, I'm going to hold on to this particular field because I need to update this field back at the last step with the number. So I'm going to create a placeholder and store this field. So the second step would be after storing this particular field, I'm going to use the same ID, the record ID, to query out the list of related work histories. Say for this example, we will have 4 work histories, and 4 work histories has a particular field called the years of experience. So we are going to query through the list of work history object records, and we would be looping through those records to get these 4 records. And once we loop through each record for this particular parent, we are going to add those years of experience value and put it into another variable. And again, the variable is a placeholder, so you're putting it into the placeholder 2. Now, after combining all these values, once you keep adding those values, so you have a summation of all these number of years of experience. Now, this whole placeholder 2 will be copied back into placeholder 1. So that's where the parent object record value is. So once you copy it to this one, now you have to do an update operation on your parent record. So that's where it will get updated in the database and it reflects back on your screen when you refresh the screen. All right. So this is the same concept what a roll-up summary would do. The only difference is that roll-up summary doesn't execute through your process builder or flows. It has its own logic built inside, but the whole logic is working on this concept, like get your parent ID, get your childs, and if you want to do a summation, loop through all the childs, get all the values summed up, copy that temporary placeholder into your parent record field, and then close the whole job, and then your whole record will be updated with your current whatever the value that has been summed up. And also, after designing all this flow, now you need to decide when this flow should be fired. So we need a triggering point to fire, not trigger. Technically, trigger is something in Salesforce, so let's not use that word. So you need a triggering point to execute this flow, right? So as I told earlier, flow can be in two ways. One, it can be auto launch flow, so which means it gets triggered when a particular action takes place in your record, or it gets triggered when your record is being updated or a record is being created in the system. And also, flow can be triggered when you have the screen variables on your flow, then the flow becomes like a UI flow. So you basically create a couple of screen or a single screen to create a layout, something like this. So if you see in the right hand side, add work history, this is again a flow. So this whole screen is a flow. So you can design either screen type of flow, or you can design an auto launch flow, which is going to execute in the background. You will not see any changes in the front end, but your values will get updated, or whatever the manipulations you are designed for the flow, that will get executed. So let's go ahead and get started with this particular use case. So first thing I have to do is a record lookup, right? So I'm going to drag and drop a record lookup. So I'm going to say lookup. I'm going to look up on job application first. I have the custom object name as application. And the field I'm going to query is, this is a var class. So whenever you do a lookup, you need to, it's basically like designing a query. If you're from coding background, if you're not from coding background, imagine that you are putting a filter criteria to get that one record. So all we need is the record from this particular page, right? So we need to get this record ID so that you can pass that ID through this filter criteria, so that you boil down to your one record in the whole list of job applications. So let's say an ID matches equal to so now it's a new flow. We didn't create a placeholder, so I'm going to create a placeholder called variable. I say where record ID, and my data type is going to be text. As you see, there's only primitive level of data types you can use. So you cannot use a data type called ID. So I have to store the ID as text. And as I told you, these are like the declaration parameters where you can say this ID is going to be used privately inside this flow, or you can say this ID is coming as an input from the UI, or you can say this ID is going to go out from the UI. And you can say this ID can be used like a transactional one. Like you can either pass this ID to another elements outside the UI, or you can say this ID can be passed inside the flow, like fetching the ID from a different element as well. So let's say we are going to fetch this ID anyway. So I'm going to put the input and output just in case if you want to use it to pass it to any other element, we can use that as well. So when you come down here, so now you have defined a filter criteria for that object. So now it says a filter criteria that will boil you down to one record. So now once you land on the record, you need to look at one particular field, right? So let's say total years of experience is the field I want to capture into a placeholder. So I'm going to create a placeholder again called where total years. So I'm adding this where as a best practice because whenever in flow, it's advised to use this keyword where to differentiate whenever you have a very big flow. If you look at the list of resources, if you want to easily identify what type of placeholder it is. This var will say you that, hey, this is a variable placeholder. And there are many other types of placeholders as well. You can create a string variable, you can create a choice variable. So for those things, you can use short form notation that it will show you what type of variable it is. So this is a plain variable, and the field I'm holding is total years. And I say this is a number because I have that as a number format. Scale is like how many decimal units you want to have. And let's say this is going to be private because I'm going to be using it internally. And this is basically saying that if there is no value in this particular field, so what do you want to assign that? Say the system might recognize as a null value. So you can explicitly define as null value, or if you have some other field level default, then you can exclude this so that it doesn't override that value with a null value. So now this element has been defined. So this is step one. So I'm going to make this as a start element because my flow is going to start with this element. So once you click on this green icon, that will be set as the start element for the flow. And then, so once this is done, so let's do assignment. So this assignment is basically, so once you pull this record out, so you have the parent ID now. So now whenever the flow executes, you need to clear up this value and then add the new value. So this value might be, the existing value might be like 3 already, and there might be an update on a child record that triggers this flow. And when the flow executes, you cannot just blindly add a value to the 3 because already there is an existing value 3, and if the value coming from the flow is also like a 3 or 4, then probably it will assume as like 3, like 33. So you don't want that error to happen. So let's clear that value, like wash out the value and then store the new value. So let's say clear total years, and you go to the variables that you already created. So I'm going to say var total years equals 0. So you're explicitly saying that make this particular placeholder 0 and click on OK. Now step 2 is done, and let's go to the step 3. So that's going to be, we are going to look up into the list of records that's under that particular parent. So for that, as I told in the last session, fast lookup is the one which we need to use for the list of records. So normal record lookup is for looking up for one record. Fast lookup is like a collection of records. Let's say lookup collection and collection of work history, right? So let's say and I'm going to choose the object as work history, and I need to define a filter criteria again because you don't want to loop through the whole list of work history. You just want to loop through the list of the selected records for this particular parent. So let's say just want to go back to see what is the field name of that parent in the child object. It's job ID. Job ID equals, again, the job ID is a lookup field, so you will always associate a ID value to it. So we already have stored the ID value, that is var record ID, that is the parent ID, and we are going to set the filter as the lookup field will obviously be a parent. So we are saying query all the records from work history where the lookup field is equal to that parent ID which we stored. So that will give me the list of childs that I have for this particular parent. Let's say list. Okay, we need to create a new variable because this should be always a list variable. So you can create two types of variable. One is a variable that is going to be, if you are doing a looping, then you'll be always use a object variable. And as I told you, if you're just creating a list, you always go with a subject collection variable. I'm going to choose a collection variable, and I say list work history. Let's put as WH. And I'm going to use this internally. So I say private. I choose the object. Since we selected SObject collection variable, you need to map that variable to a particular object. So that will define, okay, this collection can contain records only from this particular object. And if you try to assign different object, it will give you the throw you error. Now the variable is being defined. So I'm saying query all these values and put inside this particular collection list. And now we are not going to look up at all the fields that we have. We just need one particular field, right? So let's define the field. So it's asking which field you want to look up from that whole collection of record lists. So let's say this is going to be years of experience. So I do OK. So now this step will bring me the whole collection of record list. So now let's do, once we have the collection, now we have to loop through each record in the list. So it's a loop element. Let's say loop work history. So here is where it's asking loop through what? So which list you want to loop through? So we already created a collection variable. So that collection variable is right now it's holding the whole list of child object records. So let's loop through this, and it's like optional. If you want to loop through in a particular order, you can do it. It's based on case by case. So for our use case, we don't need that. So let's leave it. And looping variable. So this is where I told where you would do a SObject variable. So the basic difference between the collection loop and this one is now you have a collection list of a collection of records, and now you are assigning a pointer to that record. Say in the first iteration, so looping is basically a list of iterations, right? So let's say you have 10 records and you are going to loop through 10 records, which means you are going to loop through step 1 to step 10. It's not actually step, you are going to look at each record 1 to record 10. So the step you go from 1, 2, 3, and 4. So each step is defined like an iteration. So it's called iteration. And iteration is basically a repetition of pointing to the next records. So this is the variable that you will assign for iteration. So there's a difference why we assign this SObject variable and why we assign a SObject list variable. So the variable which we defined earlier is a SObject list variable where you hold the collection of lists. And this variable is like a point, you're assigning a pointer to a record while the loop is going on. So that the loop recognizes, okay, the pointer is pointing to the record 1. And now when the second iteration goes, it will automatically point to record 2. And it will go to record 3 and 4. So it will go through 10 iterations. Let's create a new variable. Say, let's call it as pointer work history. So again, this whole variable is going to be used internally inside this flow. So I'm going to just keep it as private. And I'm going to assign it as work history object because this the whole operation is happening inside the work history object. I say okay. So now we have defined. So now we have to define what happens inside the loop. So sorry, not what happens inside the loop. When the loop is executing, we need to define for each iteration. So right now the loop will do is it will just point to that record. So now you need to define, after pointing to that record in the first iteration, what it has to do. So you need to collect the whole list of the years of experience and add it up, right? So let's do a assignment again. So assignment is basically you either use it for assigning a variable, or you use it for assigning a value into a variable. You use it for clearing up existing value in the variable. Assignment is basically literally an assignment. So I'm going to say assign the value of the years of experience into a variable and keep adding to it. Okay. So I'm just naming an assignment, assign years of experience. So I'm going to look through the variables, which variable is going to hold my assignment. So we are already looking through the subject collection. So I would go to the subject variable. And if you see here, this pointer variable is where I have to look through. And from this pointer variable, I would see, if you see, so now you can easily understand. So this pointer variable is pointing to the whole record. It's not pointing to one particular field. It's pointing to the whole record. So when I expand that pointer variable, you all the fields under that record that is mapped to it. And this, I just need years of experience. So now I'm picking up this particular field. Now I'm going to say add. Add to what? We are going to add it to this variable experience. So this is the reason why I cleared that variable already, because now it's going to just add it to whatever the value it is present in the total variable. So now the total variable at this point of time, it will be 0 because we already cleared the value and set it as 0. So now it will say 0 plus this value. So this value could be 1, 2, 3, whatever the record says, and this value will go into this total experience. And when the next iteration comes in, so the second iteration will say, let's say 2, the number 2 is coming in this iteration. And it will say it's already 3 here, so add 3 plus 2. So that's the whole logic for this assignment. So now this assignment is done. Before connecting all others, let's first finish this logic. So I'm going to drag and drop this particular connector. And if you drag from a loop, it will say go to this element for each value in the collection, which means for each iteration in the collection. So I say for each value. So it will automatically give you a user-friendly name, like next element. So which means on the execution of the first iteration, it goes here as a next element. And then I have to connect that back again to this iteration, because once the control goes there, you have to bring that back to the loop, right, for the second iteration, or else it will stop here. It will not go. So the flow is all about you are instructing the whole logic to do something, and it's not going to do anything apart from what you have set to do. So for each and every granular detail, you have to define that. So once all these loop, and it will do the same back and forth operation for like times. And on the 10th time, it will identify as this is the end of the loop. So my whole job is done. The loop will say my whole job is done. So what should I do next? We need to define that, what we have to do next. So we are going to update the parent record. So let's do a record update. Update job application. So now that in the assignment variable, we have this whole value, the total number of years is now kept keep on adding for 10 iterations. Now the whole total number of years variable will contain a summation of values. So now we are going to add the value for record directly. This is pretty much simple. And I'm going to say update which object. And similar to how we do the record lookup. So I need to really define which particular record that I want to update. So I would say where ID equal to parent ID, which already we captured. So where record ID, this is the parent ID which we stored. So I'm saying query the application object and find the record for that parent object. And I'm going to say which field to update. So that was total years of experience, and I'm going to say which variable to update. So if you see variable total years is the placeholder which we created, and we kept on adding those variables to it for the 10 iterations and to choose that variable, so that now the summation value will go into this field. So this step will now update record. So drag and drop this one, it says end of the loop. So which is keep going on back and forth between these two steps, and at the end of the loop we will go this way and go ahead and update that parent object. So now our whole logic is done. Let's connect the dots. All right, so our flow is ready. Let's save it. Let's say update total years. And I'm going to leave it as auto launch flow. If you see, there are different types of flows. So screen flow is something that we'll see if we have the time to go forward, or else we will schedule a separate session, and we will probably schedule another session for user provisioning flows as well. So we're not taking it too much for a session. So auto launch flow is something that will happen in background whenever there is a triggering point happening. And now we have defined a flow. Let's say save it. Let's go close. So if you see here, the flow is ready. The flow version is ready. We just need to activate it. So if you ask me if this flow will work now, no, it will not work, because now you have defined the logic, but you didn't define the triggering point. So on what particular instance this flow should be triggered. So that is not yet defined. So we just defined what the flow should do and where the flow should start, but we didn't really define what will trigger that flow. So let's go ahead and create a triggering point. So the only way for flows that you can create a triggering point is two approaches. So one is through coding. You can code in Apex language to initiate this flow on any particular instance, and you can do a process builder that will automatically trigger this flow. So let's do a process builder so that it triggers this flow. Let's say this process builder is trigger total years flow. So I will say at what point this flow should be, even the process builder should be triggered. So let's say on update of any child record, this flow should execute, because you see the work history is a child object. So when I change this years to 3, then my parent object should get updated as well. So that's the logic of the whole roll-up summary field. So we are basically replacing the roll-up summary with this logic. let's say the object is work history. And I'm saying it's not only uncreated whenever it's created or edited. And I'm adding a criteria. So we need to think of, do you really need a criteria for this scenario, or do you blindly want to execute this flow every time there is an update happening in this record? So let's say, for this example, let's say let it execute for every time. So
Well, that's also called a headless flow. The word for
yeah,
that.
so we are going to just execute the flow now, but it's not advisable to do that because there might be a number of scenarios your record would be getting updated. So it's always better to define a value, but for time constraints, let's just go ahead with this. So now here, if you see in the process builder actions, you would have an option called flows. You choose a flow. Let's say same thing, trigger, work history, flow. And if you want to search for the flow, okay, I kind of forgot what was the name I gave for flow. I'm going to go back and check it out. Update total yes. Update total yes. So now this is where you will set the variables. So let me open up the flow so that you can relate to what I'm speaking. So if you see on the starting point, we were looking up at a record and we were passing this variable, but we never really assigned any variable to this. I mean, any value to this. For all other variables, the variables are getting values from somewhere, but the starting point variable doesn't get the values from anywhere. So that's why I told this flow will not work independently. You need a process builder for that, or some kind of a AX code for that. So when I define the flow, it gives me an option to add the value to a variable. So I would say, so the flow variable is where record ID string equals to, or let's say go to the formula, and the field under that work history object is going to be ID. Sorry, going to be job ID. And use this formula. So I'm assigning the job ID, the ID value of the parent to that particular flow variable so that the flow from there it can start. And now when it starts, it will have this value and it will be easy for the flow to continue the operation, or else it will give an abrupt error that there is some failure in the flow. Now I'm going to activate this. So our whole logic is now done. So I will have two screens open, one for Java application, and let me open up a new tab for work histories. Now let me open up some here. So let's say right now, if you see the total number of years is 0. So let me update a record here and see what happens. Let me go back to my email and see if there's any failure emails. I didn't get any failure emails. Let's do a debug. So usually when you get a flow failure, you tend to get a email log for it. And if you don't get the email log, the basic way of debugging is setting a debug log for the current logged in user. So I'm going to set a debug log for this user. And also you need to, whenever a flow is getting executed, you need to make sure this flow user is being ticked. And yeah, if you haven't made that checkbox on, it will obviously give you an error saying that user doesn't have access to the flow or something like that. So anyways, you can identify it, though I'm just letting you know that there's an option to enable this for the flow. So let's go ahead and do it one more time. Okay, convert into flow. It's not getting updated. Let's see what is happening here. So here, if you see, this will give you the full snapshot of what is going on inside. So it has been looping through many times, and then I don't see a error here really. Looks like it's updating successfully. Maybe it is a cache issue. So let me go ahead and refresh it a couple of times, or the opening this in our separate tab.
Yeah, these troubleshooting helps. These troubleshooting steps are very helpful, Guha. We at CBN we were implementing declarative rollups they're called DLRSs. It's an open source project on the GitHub repository. It's good, but it doesn't have this level of detail when something fails. Like you're unable to troubleshoot. It was like the logs were not very helpful in DLRS. So this is good. This is really good.
Yeah. So I'm not seeing any failure email, so which is obviously it's doing the flow. So there is only two possibilities now. Either the flow is not updating the record really, or maybe the records are having an issue with the cache. Let me again open the flow and see if I can look up any issues on the flow. I'm going to quickly refer some other flow as well, just to make sure I'm not going wrong here. Let me do one more last thing. I'm going to log out and log in again just to clear up the cache. Yeah, there's definitely something wrong with the flow. The flow is not updating the record. So the only way you can debug is let me double check if all my logic is correct again. Let me go back to the process builder and see if we have anything missed out there. Let me try this way. Earlier we were going down to the job object and then we were trying to assign the ID. Now I'm going to try directly from the lookup. Let's see if this works. I think there is something which I'm missing in this flow. Probably I may need to sit down on debugging this. So that's definitely part in the flows that you need to spend some time on debugging if something is not working. So it's not a pretty much of like a straightforward solution that you can like quickly do it. Definitely flow also needs some buffer time to debug your solution. Sometimes it will give you abruptly a failure message whenever you do a flow operation, but then sometimes the flow will execute, but things will not get updated properly. So we may need to investigate into each step of the flow. So let's say we can say this is the whole logic of how you do a roll-up summary. There's something there might be some minute detail that is missing that I would post back into the chatter referencing the video so that you guys can come back and look at it in the chatter. Probably by end of today, I'll be updating that. So, hey, Gavin, do you mind if you want to give a demo on what we built on the similar flow for your org, so that I think the flow that you had was working, right?
Certainly, yeah, I can do that. Let me connect to my org and then I'll take over.
Sure. So, Gavin, can you hear me? I lost you there.
Yeah, sorry, I had to mute because there was background noise. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen and let me log into
Sure.
the org first.
Okay. So, guys, to give a background, so we came across this situation when Gavin had a similar situation in his project, and we sat down in a Starbucks to solve this, and that's where we came up with this concept of hey, bring our study group as well. This would be more useful for people. And that's where I tried to mimic this whole flow in just like a matter of 15 minutes before this meeting. I was not really prepared. So the crux of this is that this flow, this whole logic is really working, which Gavin will be showing you in a while. But this is one way of doing a roll-up summary when you have a parent object and a child object in a lookup relationship. So this is one way of avoiding your need for your triggers logic, so that you don't have a dependency on a development team always when there is a change happening in your requirements. All right, so I'm going to stop the screen share, and I'll let Gavin to take over.
Wonderful. All right, so
Yeah, I'm just noticing the chat, Gavin. Did you notice Barbara's chat there? She lost the audio. I don't know if she's still able to hear us.
I noticed that too. So when we record this, we'll be able
Hello,
to.
guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Great, that's great.
Yeah. I don't know what happened, so I had to like dial back in, but I've been able to listen to everything.
Great. I mean, we recorded the whole thing, so and I'm gonna post it, so you'll be able to refer back to this.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
So this is the use case. The Christian Broadcasting Network needed they have a parent object called donation, which is basically an opportunity, and they have a child object called the fund allocation, which is basically it's where the donation is going to be, how the donation is going to be used is a fund allocation. So they allocate this donation money to either Bibles or to a specific project like hurricane relief. So these allocations have a fund code, and these fund codes are dynamically populated based on whatever allocation we set here. So here we see 3401, and that value comes from rolling up. The 3401 rolls up from, one second, this is still loading. rolls up from the fund allocation 3401, and Guha built an amazing flow to make that happen. So whenever, because these are lookup relationships, these are not master details. So whenever a fund code changes, show you an example. Say I go in here. And I change this to to 3406 and hit save. Hit refresh. Hold on a second. I don't think I activated the flow because this is this full sandbox. I deactivated the flow. Okay, that is active. Let me check if the process builder is also active. So while we wait, what are some topics that you guys would like covered in the coming weeks?
Integration.
Migration, okay.
No, not migration. Integration.
Integration, okay.
That's my hot topic.
All right. I mean, using what tool? There's MuleSoft. There's like, or do you want to do like a comparison of all?
Yeah, it's not just tools, but different ways of doing it. So there's webhooks, there's web service, there's tools, there's, APIs, there's, JSON, XML, it's the whole subject.
Right.
So Barbara, if you have noticed our meetup.com, there is a Salesforce Saturday coming up next week. We are going to show up payment gateway integration. So that's not something related to data or something, but it's about a new API called Stripe API, and there is an integration that's picking up recently in the market. That everyone is starting to look into the payment integration for the Stripe API. And recently I had some help with one of our meetup group folks who happen to know about this API, and he helped me in one of the assignment. And I thought we would be doing a walkthrough session of what we did on that API
Awesome. Yeah.
website for the donation and stuff like that with the payment gateway. And so that's the whole walkthrough session we are going to conduct.
Is it a face-to-face or a webinar?
So unfortunately, the guy who helped me with the kind of a webinar, but it's an in-person.
Okay.
We're not recording that. We need folks to come into the session and network with people there. That's going to be an in-person session.
Oh, it is?
Sorry?
Where it is in person? It's not something I can...
Yeah, it is in person. Yeah, we are not recording it because the purpose of the whole meetup is to have folks coming into the session and network with people along with the learning.
Right.
So,
Where is it going to be held?
So it's going to be in Kalyan's office if you know his address, or you can check out the meetup.com website to go to the Salesforce developer group, Washington DC Salesforce developer group, and you would be able to see the meetup. I will also post the link now here.
Okay.
Give me a minute. So you can sign up for that. So unfortunately, we don't have the guy who helped me with that integration coming into that meetup for that day. So I'm just going to collate all our learnings together into a presentation, and I'm going to walk through it. Probably if you have like a in-depth question about that integration, I will quickly connect back you to the person who helped me, so that he might give you very granular level of details if you need more information on that.
Great, I tested it, it's working, so now I'm ready to, if you guys missed it, I'm gonna re-demo this. So the fund code is 3406, and here's its lookup. So this lookup is going down to a child, but it's not a detail, it's an actual lookup relationship. So we go in here, we want to change this from the Hunger Strike Force project to which is 3406, and we change it to just a general Operation Blessing International fund, and we hit save, and the moment this changes to 3401, bam, in real time the donation record also changed to 3401, and all this was possible by the example that Guha walked you through today. Like, we replicated that for CBN, and what we do is we call this flow in Process Builder on the fund allocation object, which is the child object, not the donation object. The donation object is equivalent to an opportunity. The fund allocation is its child when the record is created or edited. So you saw when we made an edit to the fund code. Here, when we made the edit to this fund code, it triggered a change in the fund code field on the donation. So we make it on we make the criteria on update. So no criteria, just execute the action, and then it finds the record ID from the flow variable. Where's that flow variable? Is it? Sorry, Go. I'm not able to tell exactly in which of the screens do you have the variables here.
So that should be the last assignment variable. Go down. So that's where it's getting assigned.
Okay.
So we are basically doing a concatenation of string and storing that back to the field.
So yeah, what's happening here is you're referencing this I think Goa, you're better off. You're better off explaining this because you developed this. I was just following along as you developed this.
So, Gavin, thanks for opening opening up that flow. Actually, I just discovered a bug in this flow which I was explaining. I was actually swapping up the variables there, and then that I could see the reason why it is failing now.
Okay.
So if you can switch the presenter back to me, I can
Sure.
show the same flow which I was doing that. Before that, hold on. Let me test that again. I don't want to. Yeah, hold on for a minute. I'll just quickly come back to you on that. If this is not working, we'll go with your flow. Pretty much straightforward. So what we do in that assignment in your flow is that just concatenating all the strings together inside a field and updating to a field. I'm just going to test my flow here.
Good. I'm gonna. You have a. I gave you a presenter.
Okay. Yeah. One sec. Awesome. It's working. So let me share my screen again. Sorry guys, and it's nearly lucky that we shared the screen and then I was able to figure it out. So let me know when you guys see my screen. Maybe Gavin, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, so this was the flow which I was working on. So here is the step which I made a mistake where if you go back to the recording and if you see, I would have placed this variable on the left hand side and this variable on the right hand side. So basically what happens is, so this left hand side should be the variable where you are putting the values into, and the right hand side should be the variable that is getting manipulated. So I was swapping that back, and then that's the reason it was trying to fetch this variable which is already 0 and trying to assign it to the object variable. So it shouldn't be in that order. It should be in the vice versa, where you calculate the years of experience from the object, add it, and put it inside the variable. So that was a mistake we did. Basically, I did. That's a side effects of when you do multitasking, talking and doing something. So that was the issue there, and right now when I tested, it got updated. So let me go ahead and change some other value to show you that working in a real time. So as you saw, the particular record had value 12. Let me open this record again back as a second tab. So if you see here, this job application, right now the value is 12 years, total number of experience is 12. So I'm going to change this value from 3 to 4, so which should give me the value 13 in my job application record. So let's go back to job application. Let's refresh. Here, it got updated. So let's go back and do one more time. Let's say I come down to 1, so which should be reducing 2 years from my total experience. So if I go back to job application, it's basically cache issue, so we just need to refresh it a couple of times to see real value. You see the number is updated to 11 because I reduced 2 years from my child record. So this is the whole logic how it works. So it's basically a replacement for your roll-up summary. So this is the roll-up field, and it's rolling up all the years of experience from your child and basically it's a lookup field. You cannot implement a direct roll-up summary field. So we did a flow design for it, and then we triggered that flow from a process builder, and the process builder was triggered from the record update. So that's how you be implementing this alternative approach. And this is the same case how it happened with Gavin as well. So the field which he was trying to update. So this is basically a number field. So the concatenation doesn't work on the number. So it will automatically assume it as addition. So when you do a add operator on the assignment here, so if it is a string variable, then it will add as a concatenation of strings. And if it is a number variable, it will add as a number addition. So that's one way of doing roll-up summary. And if you want to do an average, you may need to add additional logic after this assignment. So once your assignment is done, before the record update, you would count how many records in the same loop. You would do another logic to count how many records are coming through the logic loop. And based on the count, you would be dividing this whole value by the count. So that gives you the average of the number. So basically flow will do whatever you say. So you need to define all the logics by yourself. So that's the practical way how the flow works. And I think it's already 11:28. So let's say it's a wrap up for this session, and next session probably we'll come up with the other type of flow. Say if you see here, there are user provisioning flow and screen flow. Probably we'll try to combine these two together in the next session for the flow part 3. So that's how we did a use case with the roll-up summary, and which was really helpful for Gavin. And I hope it will help you guys in future. And I'm sure it's going to be helpful for Bhavna, if she's going to see this video. And feel free to check this video anytime if you need, if you come across these type of scenarios. If you guys have any questions?
That's great. So I am going to, like I did last time, I'm going to compile all these flow series into a blog post, and I'll have the timings on each of these, in the series. So each topic will be broken down with the topic time and the time that topic is covered on the video. So you can just hit the fast forward button straight to that topic and refer to that specific. Let's say you want to learn how to debug a flow like Guha right now, and at the 1 hour mark, actually after 20 minutes after the hour, he covers debugging a flow. So you can go straight to that topic and reference that. So this would be your flow library, I would say, in the event that you choose to follow this path for a customer. But then again, if this is too complex, there are products already in the App Exchange. They're not free. There's a product called Rollup Helper, where they charge you per user. They have a per user licensing model to do these kind of roll-ups declaratively. And there's also a tool called DLRS. I have had a good experience with that. Neither did any of my clients, and this is why we are getting rid of DLRS and going to the method that Guha has explained here. So be cautious if you do suggest DLRS to any of your customers. There's quite a lot of efficiencies in the Apex code in the background. So yeah, I hope this is useful to you. And go ahead.
No, this is awesome. Thanks to the both of you for putting this together.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And Jen, if you ever get a chance to come to one of our in-person meetings, they're a pretty awesome group. So if you're ever in DC, next week actually is going to be in person. So I hope you can come up here.
Next week I can't, but I'm hoping to make one of them.
Good. That's awesome. We also have a non-profit user group in DC. I'll send you the invite to their meetings. They're also another good resource for the NPSP implementations that you're doing with IT for courses.
Okay, fantastic. And yeah, I joined your meetup too, your developer meetup.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, look for the recording, and until next week, I wish you guys an awesome weekend and a week ahead.
You too.
Have a great one.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for joining in. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.